All right, well, welcome everyone to our April the 29th Bible reading. As we get ready to jump back into our 2 Samuel chapter 17 reading, we're in the middle of dealing with David. We're reading about David and Absalom. And, we're just reminded over and over again. Again, I encourage you, we don't want to get so lost in the details and the minutia of the story that we forget what it is that is happening, in the grand narrative of David and of the Israelites and God moving the chosen people, this family tree, in moving them to the promised land, in establishing them as a people, putting parameters around them and giving them clear instructions as to how to live, how to function, in order for them to be able to preserve themselves as a nation, as a people of faith, right? Faith in God is supposed to be at the core of who they are, and moving them forward as the people of God that will eventually bring the Messiah into place. The problem that we're seeing is the issue of sin. Okay, sin is the core issue as we are seeing the Israelite people, even people that God has chosen, to bring the Messiah through their family tree. Sin is this constant problem that will continue to plague the nation of Israel far beyond King David, but with the kings that will follow. And right now we're seeing what happens when sin begins to get root in a family, how it will destroy a family, and how it will destroy a nation. It can destroy cities. It destroys people, and we see here, the core areas. One of the ways that sin finds its way in. Had a great professor once that said, "Listen, the pathway to failure as a church leader, as a spiritual leader, is going to be he's going to attack you through money, sex, or power." I think I mentioned this before, but in the reality is how often that's the case for not just people who are in spiritual leadership, but leaders over their homes or their families, people in general, right? Money, sex, power. And obviously it finds its roots in other things, in selfishness, in greed, idolatry. I mean, all kinds of ways that sin finds its way into our lives, and that's the core problem, right? Now we're seeing examples of this. And so the question is, why is all of this in the Bible? We're seeing examples of how sin comes in and it begins to erode and destroy people both from without and from within. And the work of God is that God would bring redemption. Now the grace of God, even with the Israelite people, is God clearly outlined things for them to make sure that they followed. He outlined instructions, gave it to Moses, passed it on down through the family tree, even to the point where the kings are supposed to be meditating on the law of God day and night, keeping this in front of them so they don't forget, so they don't try to lead out of their own power, out of their own wisdom, but God has given them clear instruction. And such is the case for us, right? God has given us clear instruction, and we need to continue to just absorb God's word into our hearts, into our lives, that we would live with the parameters. Why? Because God wants to bring his blessing into our lives. He wants to lead us. He wants to bring a hope and a future, right? I mean, that's what God has for us, this abundant life through Jesus. But it's so important that we absorb his word and we understand what it is that he's called us to be, what he's called us to do, how he's called us to live. And so just remember that as we're reading through this, some of this, we get caught in the narrative, but let's remember what the narratives are all about. Okay, so let's keep reading about Absalom, because Absalom is now in full-blown rebellion against his father David. And so we'll continue to read and see what happens next. 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 15. Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar the priests what Ahithophel had said to Absalom and the elders of Israel and what he himself had advised instead. Quick, he told them, find David and urge him not to stay at the shallows of the Jordan River tonight. He must go across at once into the wilderness beyond, otherwise he will die and his entire army with him. Jonathan and Ahimaaz had been staying at En Rogel so as not to be seen entering and leaving the city. Arrangements had been made for a servant girl to bring them the message they were to take to King David. But a boy spotted them at En Rogel, and he told Absalom about it. So they quickly escaped to Bahurim, where a man hid them down inside a well in his courtyard. The man's wife put a cloth over the top of the well and scattered grain on it to dry in the sun, so no one suspected they were there. When Absalom's men arrived, they asked her, have you seen Ahimaaz and Jonathan? And the woman replied, they were here, but they crossed over the brook. Absalom's men looked for them without success and returned to Jerusalem. Then the two men crawled out of the well and hurried on to King David. Quick, they told him, cross the Jordan tonight, and they told him how Ahithophel had advised that he be captured and killed. So David and all the people with him went across the Jordan River during the night, and they were all on the other bank before dawn. When Ahithophel realized that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. He died there and was buried in the family tomb. So David soon arrived at Mahanaim. By now, Absalom had mobilized the entire army of Israel and was leading his troops across the Jordan River. Absalom had appointed Amasa as commander of his army, replacing Joab, who had been commander under David. Amasa was Joab's cousin. His father was Jether, an Ishmaelite. His mother, Abigail, daughter of Nahash, was the sister of Joab's mother, Zeruiah. Absalom and the Israelite army set up camp in the land of Gilead. And when David arrived at Mahanaim, he was warmly greeted by Shobi, son of Nahash, who came from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and by Makir, the son of Amiel from Lo Debar, and by Barzillai of Gilead from Rogelim. They brought sleeping mats, cooking pots, serving bowls, wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans, lentils, honey, butter, sheep, goats, and cheese for David and those who were with him. For they said, you must all be very hungry and tired and thirsty after your long march through the wilderness. So now we'll jump over and we're going to read Psalm 3 and Psalm 63. And this is a psalm of David during the time that he fled from his son Absalom. And again, put yourself in David's place, what he must have been feeling as he was now fleeing from his own son. He says, O Lord, I have so many enemies. So many are against me. So many are saying God will never rescue him. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. I am not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. Arise, O Lord, rescue me, my God. Slap all my enemies in the face, shatter the teeth of the wicked. Victory comes from you, O Lord. May you bless your people. Okay, in Psalm 63. And this one is in regard to when David, he retreats into the wilderness of Judah. And he says, O God, you are my God, and I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. I will praise you as long as I live, lifting up my hands to you in prayer. You satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy. I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night, because you are my helper. I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your strong right hand holds me securely. But those plotting to destroy me will come to ruin. They will go down in the depths of the earth. They will die by the sword and become the food of jackals. But the king will rejoice in God. All who trust in him will praise him, while liars will be silenced. And it's interesting as David is writing these things, David says, God, I've been with you. I've seen you in your sanctuary. I've gazed upon your beauty. And so your love is better than the richest feast back in Jerusalem. And so he's taken his solace in God. And in that moment, as he's not in the comfortable, confines of the palace as a king, but he's out in this wilderness and he's in hiding for his own life. And yet he's saying, God, I'm finding my comfort in you, because in the past I've been with you. In the past I've been comforted by you. And now, right now in the future, I'm not living as a king, but I'm resting in you. And he uses the words in verse 8, I cling to you. I cling to you, God, because you're my helper. This is one who is going through it. Have you ever gone through it? David's gone through it. And he says, Lord, I cling to you. I'm not going to let go of you in this very hard time. And he's looking at Absalom, and he's looking at, who's influencing him, who's trying to convince him. Obviously, there's people around Absalom that are speaking things into his ear, had been speaking things into his ear, and he's, trying to get him to rebel, and trying to get him to turn against his father. And so David, he's like, Lord, would you break the teeth of those people who are in the ear of Absalom, who are spreading these lies. And that's what he says. He says, while liars will be silenced. And so if you've ever been on the receiving end of lies that are spoken about you, let me tell you, it hurts. It hurts. It's hard. And especially when it seems that the tide is turned against you. Again, that's a difficult time. I've been in those seasons where it looks like, there are just lies spoken about you, and people are believing them, and yet God is the one he's your vindicator. That God is the one who's going to protect. God's the one who's going to let the truth shine out. And let me tell you, if you've ever walked in those journeys, all you've got in that moment, all you've got is God, and you hold on to him with all your heart. And the good news is God is able. But sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes walking through a valley like this. Sometimes it takes, having to kind of escape into the wilderness. And you're sitting in the wilderness and you feel like you're all by yourself. But God is there and he is faithful. And that's what's going on with David. And so when you're in your wilderness, stepping up outside of this narrative in the 10,000 foot view, and just remembering that, first of all, spend time with God. Spend time with God before you have wilderness experiences, right? Spend time. He says, I've been with you. You've satisfied me with the more than the richest feasts. And so spending time with God now, daily, in season and out of season, it prepares us for the times when we have the wilderness experiences. When we have the wilderness experiences, if we haven't had those times with God, if we don't have that confidence in walking with him, then it's too late. Because you're not fortified in your spirit, you're not fortified in your soul with God, and so you got to walk with him. And as you walk with him, when you have these moments, God will get you through. All right, so 2 Samuel 18, David now mustered the men who were with him and appointed generals and captains to lead them. He sent the troops out in 3 groups, placing one group under Joab, one under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and one under Ittai, from the man from Gath. And the king told his troops, I'm going out with you. But his men objected strongly. You must not go, they urged. If we have to turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troops. They will be looking only for you. You are worth 10,000 of us, and it is better that you stay here in the town and send help if we need it. If you think that's the best plan, I'll do it, the king answered. So he stood alongside the gate of the town as all the troops marched out in groups of hundreds and thousands. And the king gave this command to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, for my sake, deal gently with young Absalom. And all the troops heard the king give this order to his commanders. So the battle began in the forest of Ephraim, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. There was great slaughter that day, and 20,000 men laid down their lives. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. During the battle, Absalom happened to come upon some of David's men, and he tried to escape on his mule, but as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great tree, his hair got caught in the tree. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air. One of David's men saw what had happened and told Joab, "I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree." "What?" Joab demanded. "You saw him there and didn't kill him? I would have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." "I would not kill the king's son for 1,000 pieces of silver," the man replied to Joab. "We all heard the king say to you and Abishai and Ittai, 'For my sake, please spare young Absalom.' And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, and the king would certainly find out who did it, you yourself would be the first to abandon me." "Enough of this nonsense," Joab said. Then he took 3 daggers, plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangled, still alive, in the great tree. 10 of Joab's young armor-bearers then surrounded Absalom and killed him. And then Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. They threw Absalom's body into a deep pit in the forest and piled a great heap of stones over it, and all Israel fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the king's valley, for he said, "I have no son to carry on my name." He named the monument after himself, and it is known as Absalom's monument to this day. Then Zadok's son Ahimaaz said, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord has rescued him from his enemies." "No," Joab told him, "it wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You can be my messenger another time, but not today." And then Joab said to a man from Ethiopia, "Go tell the king what you've seen." The man bowed and ran off. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab, "Whatever happens, please let me go too." "Why should you go, my son?" Joab replied. "There will be no reward for your news." "Yes, but let me go anyway," he begged. Joab finally said, "All right, go ahead." So Ahimaaz took the less demanding route by way of the plain and ran to Mahanaim ahead of the Ethiopian. And while David was sitting between the inner and the outer gates of the town, the watchman climbed to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked, he saw a lone man running toward them. He shouted the news to David, and the king replied, "If he is alone, he has news." As the messenger came closer, the watchman saw another man running toward them. He shouted down, "Here comes another one." And the king replied, "He also will have news." "The first man runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok," the watchman said. "He's a good man and comes with good news," the king replied. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "Everything is all right." He bowed before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise to the Lord your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against my lord the king." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" And Ahimaaz replied, "When Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion, but I didn't know what was happening." "Wait here," the king told him. So Ahimaaz stepped aside. Then the man from Ethiopia arrived and said, "I have good news for my lord the king. Today the Lord has rescued you from all those who rebelled against you." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" And the Ethiopian replied, "May all your enemies, my lord the king, both now and in the future, share the fate of that young man." The king was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room over the gateway and burst into tears. And as he went, he cried, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Well, word soon reached Joab that the king was weeping and mourning for Absalom. As all the people heard of the king's deep grief for his son, the joy of that day's victory was turned into deep sadness. And they crept back into the town that day as though they were ashamed and had deserted in battle. The king covered his face with his hands and kept on crying, "Oh, my son Absalom. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." And then Joab went to the king's room and said to him, "We saved your life today, and the lives of your sons and your daughters and your wives and concubines. Yet you act like this, making us feel ashamed of ourselves. You seem to love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that your commanders and troops mean nothing to you. It seems that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died, you would be pleased. Now go out there and congratulate your troops. For I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a single one of them will remain here tonight. Then you will be worse off than ever before." So the king went out and took his seat at the town gate, and as the news spread throughout the town that he was there, everyone went to him. And meanwhile, the Israelites who had supported Absalom fled to their homes. And throughout all the tribes of Israel, there was much discussion and argument going on. The people were saying, "The king rescued us from our enemies and saved us from the Philistines, but Absalom chased him out of the country. Now Absalom, whom we anointed to rule us, is dead. Why not ask David to come back and be our king again?" And then King David sent Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, to say to the elders of Judah, "Why are you the last ones to welcome back the king into his palace? For I have heard that all Israel is ready. You are my relatives, my own tribe, my own flesh and blood. So why are you the last ones to welcome back the king?" And David told them to tell Amasa, "Since you are my own flesh and blood like Joab, may God strike me and even kill me if I do not appoint you as commander of my army in his place." Then Amasa convinced all the men of Judah, and they responded unanimously. They sent word to the king, "Return to us and bring back all who are with you." So the king started back to Jerusalem, and when he arrived at the Jordan River, the people of Judah came to Gilgal to meet him and escort him across the river. Shimei the son of Gera, a man from Bahurim in Benjamin, hurried across with the men of Judah to welcome King David. 1,000 other men from the tribe of Benjamin were with him, including Ziba, the chief servant of the house of Saul, and Ziba's 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed down to the Jordan to meet the king. They crossed the shallows of the Jordan to bring the king's household across the river, helping him in every way they could. And as the king was about to cross the river, Shimei fell down before him. "My lord the king, please forgive me," he pleaded. "Forget the terrible things your servant did when you left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. I know how much I have sinned. That is why I have come here today, the very first person in all Israel to greet my lord the king." And then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said, "Shimei should die, for he cursed the Lord's anointed king." "Who asked your opinion, you sons of Zeruiah?" David exclaimed. "Why have you become my adversary today? This is not a day for execution, but for celebration. Today I am once again the king of Israel." And then turning to Shimei, David vowed, "Your life will be spared." Now Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, came down from Jerusalem to meet the king. He had not cared for his feet, trimmed his beard, or washed his clothes since the day the king left Jerusalem. "Why didn't you come with me, Mephibosheth?" the king asked him. Mephibosheth replied, "My lord the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him, 'Saddle my donkey so I can go with the king.' For as you know, I am crippled, and Ziba has slandered me by saying that I refuse to come. But I know that my lord the king is like an angel of God, so do what you think best. All my relatives and I could expect only death from you, my lord, but instead you have honored me by allowing me to eat at your own table. What more can I ask?" "You've said enough," David replied. "I've decided that you and Ziba will divide your land equally between you." "Give him all of it," Mephibosheth said. "I am content just to have you safely back again, my lord the king." All right, so it's interesting to see what's happening between Shimei, between Mephibosheth, between Ziba, all of those that they thought that the king was done, right? And the king comes back, and there's a little bit of they've got to come in and they got to make peace with David because now David's back, and I'm sure that some of them were wondering whether or not they were going to die. Ziba had told David that Mephibosheth had really kind of abandoned him and said, "Hey, I'm Saul. I'm going to get my kingdom back now." Mephibosheth says, "No, that was a lie. He's slandered me." And yet David does not chase either of those things down. David does not kill them. He kind of takes the high ground on it, and he figures that he will see what happens in the days, the weeks, months, and years to come. So incredible story. right? As we see a king that has been displaced, now he comes back and he is mourning for his son, and they are back in Jerusalem now. And we'll see what happens with the fallout, right? What's the fallout going to be? Now that David has come back, but there is obviously some, the people are disturbed. They can't quite figure out what to make of this thing, because David just leaves without putting up a fight, and then they do defeat Absalom's, Absalom's army of men, but it still leaves the nation of Israel pretty unsettled. And we'll pick up the rest of the story tomorrow. So hope you're enjoying this. Keep catching that 10,000 foot view of sin and what it does, and what it did for the Israelite people, and what happens next with David and and the people of Israel. And we'll work our way through the end of 2 Samuel. So we're really very close to getting our way through the book of 2 Samuel. And after that, we move into kind of picking up the story of 1 Chronicles and some more of the history of the Israelite people. All right, so God bless you. Thanks for reading with me today. I hope you have a really great day.